The thing that saves this movie is it has some pretty strong family themes in it. Just
Sure.
kind of how they deal with it as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then how Mel Gibson kind of struggles with his faith and then refines it and stuff. Like all that stuff
Yeah.
is pretty solid. So there's enough there. There's enough heart there for people to be able to latch onto and be like, okay, despite it being because that's his shtick, right? He puts these emotional themes into these suspenseful films, so it gives them a lot of heart rather than just a generic like jump scare film.
Okay, yeah, that was the point I was going to say earlier, is that
There it is.
instead of, in Sixth Sense, it's a ghost story. And normally when you get a ghost story, you just get spooky scares and then it ends.
Right.
And he changed that because he told a really powerful narrative about, like, again, grief and loss, which is what ghosts are actually about. So
Right.
that there's a narrative continuity there. And so when he gets to this one, I could kind of see where the inspiration is coming from, because sometimes people of faith they struggle with this concept of like aliens or
Right.
things that are, I guess, I don't want to say supernatural, but like
Extraterrestrial.
there's usually like explanations, and like aliens don't fit into the explanations for real, like, for the meaning of life or whatever. So when they have to contend with that, but the thing is I never really get that Mel Gibson is like, aliens aren't real, or like, the congregation is stupid because they think that, this stuff is real and it's not. It's just ridiculous. Like, that's not what happens. Instead, he's already abandoned his faith, and we don't really know why.
Right.
It's just that his wife has died. So you're like, okay, so I guess he's going through a rough patch.
Right.
And then, like, somehow watching his brother beat an alien to death with a baseball bat is enough to have him reclaim his faith. Yeah, that's how I got my faith restored. There is a God now.
There it is.
So the emotional, like, resolution that he wants in this one is there. You can see it. I like the last shot where you see Mel Gibson putting on his uniform, his cufflinks and stuff, and then he goes off to Sunday Mass. I'm like, okay, that's good. It's just like, how did we get to here? How does this make sense? Like, given, like, I don't know what he experienced that somehow changed his faith in any meaningful way.
I mean, it was his son coming close to death, I think, was the point. Because he's out there hoping that the inhaler will bring him back. He's like, oh, please say his lungs were closed up. So
is that supposed to be like a reliant on technology or something then? And he needs to rely on his faith? Is that what they're trying to do?
Yeah, because he had faith that he didn't inhale a gas, and so it didn't kill him.
Okay.
So I mean, it plays into that theme a little bit. But again, like it wasn't as carefully crafted for sure as Sixth Sense. But then he thought that he could get away with this twist without having an actually good twist. And so it just decreased the quality naturally because, Sixth Sense is designed around that twist.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has those two narratives where you're kind of playing with the presuppositions of traditional horror fans and also putting in these really powerful elements that made up the narrative of ghosts in the first place. When you get to Signs, he does the whole faith and aliens thing where the unexplainable with the explainable, I guess, science versus non, or God versus science, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But not everything in the story leads to that, and then you have moments where the thing's like dying by these glasses of water falling on it, or him beating it with a bat, where it's like these are not payoffs that play into the story. So it just kind of like fumbles with the arc, and you're like, well, I don't know what to get from this anymore.
Yeah.
Just because this resolution doesn't make any sense. Like on a family level, it was fine, him saving his son and such. But at that point, it just kind of demoralized the aliens altogether. It just took away all their gravitas and was like, everything that I was scared of for the whole movie just got beat up by this little guy. It was sad.
And here's the other thing too. Even though I think the scares are executed well in terms of freaking you out in Signs, I actually think they're not as good as the Sixth Sense, for the simple reason that they're just there to scare. They're not there to serve the narrative, and that's the problem.
Right.
Whereas if you look at the Sixth Sense, everything is that dual-natured property. So, like one of the key themes in Sixth Sense is that the ghosts see what they want to see.
Right.
Right. And so if you're only seeing what you want to see, it means that a lot of the things you think you're perceiving is just the way that you would prefer it. And so that's like this really powerful, this extra message about how limited our perception of reality actually is.
Right.
Right. And so when he replays certain shots or sequences and you see things in a different light and you're like, oh man, this person only saw this, but this person only saw that when that scene was happening, right? And they were totally at odds with each other.
Yeah.
It's illuminating how now it serves something meaningful in the story. That never happens in Signs. It's just that was just a creepy scene. And like he's never Mel Gibson's character is never confronted with like, well, no, like faith doesn't allow this to exist, so I saw something else. And I'm not saying it needs to be a sight thing, but it just needs to be a thing.
Sure.
That he needs to be using these scares not just to scare. Like the birthday one, I think is commendable because that one's kind of playing into like formative years, I guess. So you could start pulling a link if he wants to poke at that a little more.
Well, that's also the first time you see one of the things. So it brings them into reality, which would make you question, okay, what is it that I believe that is real? Or, you know, how does this challenge my faith? Or, you know, that kind of thing would play into those themes, and it didn't at all.
No,
so,
it didn't.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Sixth Sense is that you keep going back and rewatching it with all these themes in mind, and it changes it.
Right.
Or it gives you different answers or more to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Sixth Signs does not do that.